I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. A building is bombed and dozens of children are gunned down by a religious extremist. We'll try to understand the Oslo attacks. Plus, this young lady from the Brooklyn diocese is bound for Madrid, and a trip she'll never forget.
I hope that when other people see the amount of young people today that are still, strong in the faith, they, get a sense that this isn't blasé or something old or some superstition, that this is real.
And on your mark, get set, pray. This pastor's NASCAR pre-race prayer has got everybody talking.
Lord, I want to thank you for my smoking hot wife tonight.
Well, good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. Norway continues to grieve in the wake of Friday's brutal bombing and hour-long shooting spree that left an estimated 76 people dead, and a country best known for awarding the Nobel Peace Prize attempting to make sense of the utterly senseless. The streets of Oslo were awash with flowers yesterday as over 150,000 Norwegians gathered in the country's capital to mourn the dead, paying their respects with a march of roses and responding to last week's act of terrorism with peaceful defiance. The twin attacks have focused everyone's attention on their alleged perpetrator, 32-year-old Anders Breivik, and perhaps most importantly, his motivation. So the terror suspect has been described as a Christian fundamentalist, anti-Muslim, a right-wing extremist, and even anti-Christian. All that since the discovery of a 1,500-page online manifesto calling for a, quote, Christian war to defend Europe against the threat of Muslim domination. But was Breivik's crusade Christian or just plain maniacal? Well, here to help answer that question, I'm joined by Frank Gaffney. He's the president of the Center for Security Policy in Washington, D.C. He joins us on the phone now. Frank, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
A pleasure to be with you.
So I read off a few ways there that Breivik has been described. A right-wing extremist, anti-Muslim, Christian fundamentalist, even some calling him anti-Christian or very un-Christian because of the acts that he carried out. Which of those labels best fits him?
Well, there are several that come to mind that you didn't mention. Psychopath would be top of my list. Unchristian certainly would apply. A man who wantonly murders children, among others, is certainly not someone who can have any claim to be doing so in accordance with the teachings of Christ. What I think we really have to keep in focus here is this individual who is at best poorly known to us. We're still being introduced to some of the materials that he has ostensibly produced. This 1,500-page manifesto, for example, is best described as kind of a pastiche of things either plagiarized or simply excerpted from a whole host of other people. It's very unclear exactly what he actually thinks or believes, but I think what is really the most important point is he does not speak for, he has not acted in a manner consistent with those of us who are worrying and warning about the threat that those who adhere to Sharia, as they call it, a political military legal program, propounded by the authorities of Islam for some 1,400 years, are engaged in, are recommending, or are in any way associated with. And that's the thing that's most troubling to me, because some of those adjectives that you've used are being similarly applied to a lot of other people who may or may not have appeared in the manifesto, but certainly have nothing to do with this guy, and join me in condemning him.
Sure. And explain to us, if you will, how you see kind of the press coverage of this so far, in using those, of course, all of the labels that I mentioned to open this up. I mean, all of those came from people either talking to the press or the press themselves describing him this way. What do you make of how the press has handled the coverage of this story so far?
I think this is a generalization, of course, but I think it's troubling that so many in the press including, eminent publications like the New York Times, have pounced upon what they believe to be an association between this individual and others to defame, really, those others, to suggest that they too are Christian or conservative right-wing extremists given to this kind of mayhem and malevolence. And it's just not so. And why I think it's important to make that distinction as clear as we can is, in Europe, now for a year or so, we've begun seeing people who may be Christian, they may be conservative, they may be something else, but they have come together in lawful, peaceful, and I think entirely legitimate ways, including democratic processes, to push back against those who are seeking to transform their societies by insinuating Sharia into them and forcing others to submit to it. And that's this individual, psychopath in Oslo, has taken steps that are not only not consistent with those practices, they're very much, perhaps calculatedly, but in any event, very much at odds with that peaceful, law-abiding pushback. And I think we need more of the pushback, and it is very troubling that the press, that some in official positions here and abroad have seemingly glommed onto this guy as a way of, discrediting those counter-Sharia efforts and otherwise encouraging people to believe that those warnings that are being made by, among others, myself, are, you don't need to heed them. I think nothing could be further from the truth.
Sure. And Frank, you've written a column about this, I understand, in CatholicLane.com. It also appeared in the Washington Times. Is that correct?
It did appear in the Washington Times. I'm very delighted to know it appeared in Catholic Lane.
All right. Well, very good. Well, we'll link folks up to that if they want to read more on what you have to say on this topic. And we appreciate you taking a few minutes here to join us today here on Currents. Thanks very much.
Pleasure's mine. I'm sorry it's on this occasion, but thank you for having me.
That's all right. Thank you very much, Frank. That is, once again, Frank Gaffney, president of the Center for Security Policy in Washington, D.C. Well, stay with us. There is more Currents coming up. Brooklyn Auxiliary Bishop Frank Caggiano will be doing a lot more than sightseeing in Madrid this summer. We'll have that story and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up in just a bit, you may have seen it on the web. It is a prayer unlike any other. But first, let's have a look at today's headlines. New York State wants DOMA repealed. Just 2 days after same-sex marriage became legal in New York, Attorney General Eric Schneiderman filed a legal brief challenging the constitutionality of the Defense of Marriage Act, or DOMA. Now, that law defines marriage on the federal level as between one man and one woman. In the brief, Schneiderman says without equal treatment by the federal government, New York's statutory commitment to marriage equality for all married couples will be substantially unrealized. Well, turning now to Maryland, where the state's Catholic Conference says Governor Martin O'Malley's decision to support same-sex marriage is, quote, regrettable. In a statement, the conference's president says that treating heterosexual and same-sex relationships differently is not unjust discrimination. They say upholding marriage as between a man and a woman allows children to benefit from having a mother and a father. Now, last week, Governor O'Malley, who is Catholic, said he would push harder to legalize same-sex marriage next year. An atheist group is suing to stop the World Trade Center cross from being displayed at the 9/11 Memorial and Museum. The cross, made of 2 steel beams that withstood the attacks on 9/11, was moved from St. Peter's Church near Ground Zero to the museum on Saturday. In a statement, the group American Atheists argues that what they call the government enshrinement of the cross was an impermissible mingling of church and state. Defendants in the lawsuit include New York City, Mayor Michael Bloomberg, the state of New Jersey, and Governor Chris Christie. Now, American Atheists is the same group that objected to the renaming of a block in Red Hook, Brooklyn, 7 in Heaven Way, after 7 firefighters who died on 9/11. In Pakistan, 3 Muslims convicted of killing a Christian who refused to convert to Islam have been sentenced to 25 years in jail. The Muslims were convicted of torturing and killing the Christian man on March 9th of last year. The men have also been ordered to pay close to $1,200 each to the victim's family. A 4th suspect was acquitted. Extremely unreasonable and rude. That is what the Chinese government has to say about the Vatican's response to the illicit ordination of 2 bishops. The government's Administration for Religious Affairs said the threat of excommunication after the ordinations, quote, seriously hurt the Chinese Catholic Church and pained priests and believers. Now, the Vatican announced last week that a bishop recently ordained without the Holy See's approval was automatically excommunicated. Meanwhile, the Chinese government has sentenced an underground Protestant leader to 2 years in a labor camp. A U.S.-based monitoring group says the pastor was sentenced over the weekend for organizing illegal religious gatherings. The pastor's church has also been ordered to stop meeting. Well, a Catholic priest who had been released from a Vietnamese jail last year on medical grounds has been sent back to prison. A prison official says Father Thaddeus Nguyen Van Ly, a well-known advocate for democracy in Vietnam, was escorted back to jail last night. The Associated Press reports Father Nguyen has been in and out of prison and house arrest for years. He had been released last year because he had a brain tumor and suffered 3 strokes. Well, back in this country, the Pope's diplomatic representative to the U.S. has been placed on a ventilator after undergoing lung surgery. According to an announcement, doctors placed the Apostolic Nuncio, Archbishop Pietro Sambi, on the ventilator to attempt the recovery of his lung function. Sambi has served in his current position since 2006. A Philadelphia judge has halted the release of secret testimony by former Archbishop Cardinal Anthony Bevilacqua on sex abuse by priests. Prosecutors filed the 2003 testimony as part of its case against Monsignor William Lynn, who's accused of knowingly transferring priests accused of abuse without warning the new parish. Now, on Friday, Monsignor Lynn filed a motion to have the charges against him dismissed. In the same case, 2 other priests, along with a former priest and a former teacher, are being charged with abuse. A janitor accused of killing a priest in New Jersey has rejected a plea deal that would have given him 30 years behind bars. The janitor is accused of killing the priest at the parish rectory at St. Patrick's Church in Chatham back in 2009. Prosecutors say the priest was preparing to fire the janitor after learning he had been charged in 1988 with sexually touching a child. The janitor could face life in prison if he's convicted. And pilgrims from the Diocese of Brooklyn will see at least one familiar face during this year's World Youth Day in Madrid, Spain. Brooklyn Auxiliary Bishop Frank Caggiano is one of 8 U.S. bishops selected to host English-speaking catechesis sessions there. Each bishop has been asked to prepare 3 sessions to be presented August 17th through the 19th. New York Archbishop Timothy Dolan, Rockville Center Bishop William Murphy, and newly appointed Philadelphia Archbishop Charles Chaput were also selected. Well, stay with us. There is much more currents ahead. Coming up, World Youth Day is just around the corner, and she'll be there.
World Youth Day is more than just a trip. It's me coming out forward, almost like a confirmation, like this is my faith and this is what I believe in and this is why I'm here.
Welcome back. The mother of all Catholic young adult events, also known as World Youth Day, will launch in Madrid less than a month from now. Over 1 million young adults, chaperones, and priests from all over the globe will converge on Spain's capital to celebrate all things Catholic. And the event will culminate with the celebration of an outdoor mass with the Pope. The Diocese of Brooklyn will send 500 pilgrims to the highly anticipated week-long event. And tonight we share with you the story of one World Youth Day pilgrim. Claudia Gonzalez is no stranger to World Youth Day. The Holy Family parishioner was actually part of the diocesan delegation back in 2008 when the venue was Sydney, Australia. Well, now she's preparing to travel to new lands to celebrate her faith, and she is tonight's eyewitness.
To me, World Youth Day is more than just a trip. It's me coming out forward, almost like a confirmation, like this is my faith and this is what I believe in and this is why I'm here. My first World Youth Day was in Sydney, Australia, and when I came back from that, I knew right away that I wanted to go back. So I joined up with the youth group from the parish, and we've done lots of fundraising, but a lot in the past year. We've done pumpkin sales and raffles and collecting cans. So we've really been working towards this for quite some time now. When we went on the pilgrimage walk, I was impressed by the amount of teens who had come for this pilgrimage. That was the first time I really understood how many people were there, because usually we were at catechism, and when the Pope arrived the first time on the boat, you know, there was small groups of people still coming in, but at the end, when everyone was there, it was just overwhelming. I just was inspired. I thought I was going to be very intimidated when I saw the Pope, but the way they had us lined up the first time, we were very close. There was only about 2 people in front of me. And he came around and he was waving to us all, and it just seemed like, you know, he was one of our friends driving around in a car. And then when he does his masses, you know, he refers to us as the young ones and, you know, his children and this and that. And it just feels like, I didn't feel worried at all, didn't feel intimidated at all. So I'm more excited as the days go on, like counting down the days. You could feel the presence of Christ when you're there from the beginning, when you just arrived onto the airport and in the streets, and up to the very last Mass. You know, we're all there for the same reason. We all believe in the teachings of Christ, and this is why we were here, and this is why we behave this way. I hope that when other people see the amount of young people today that are still, you know, strong in the faith, they, you know, get a sense that this isn't blasé or something old or some superstition, that this is real, you know, and that this is still alive today, and it's not, you know, being thrown under the rug, and that there are kids from all over the world, and it's not just from one place or from one church, that this is Catholic, this is universal. When you're there, you realize just how alive everything is, and the youth, they really believe, and whether they can fully grasp all of the doctrine and all of the mysteries, or whether they're just starting to understand, you meet a spectrum of people, from people who want to believe and are struggling with their faith to people who are so steadfast that, you know, you really get a sense that this is growing, and with time, we will be the next church, and if anyone has a doubt, they can just meet us in Madrid.
Just meet him there. Stay tuned, there is more Currents coming up. When we return, is this the best pre-race prayer ever?
Thank you for the Dodges and the Toyotas.
We'll let you decide.
In Jesus' name, boogity, 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 amen.
And finally tonight, YouTube's crowded field of annoying oranges, Lady Gaga wannabes, and talking dogs have got some new competition of the divine kind to contend with. Yes, another viral video out there. NASCAR has certainly seen its share of racing highs and racing lows, but you can bet it's never seen anything the likes of Joe Nelms and his pre-race prayer that's fast becoming an online viral sensation, as well as a lightning rod for condemnation. The Family Baptist Church pastor said he just wanted his prayer to be something that the fans would remember. And he can be certain that his prayer, which is really kind of part product placement, part tribute to Will Ferrell's iconic film Talladega Nights, won't be forgotten anytime soon. CNN's Jeannie Mose has more.
It was the best of prayers, it was the worst of prayers.
Lord, I want to thank you for my smoking hot wife tonight.
It was a prayer unlike any other.
Lord in heaven.
Hail Mary, full of grace.
This prayer was full of cars, NASCARs.
So we want to thank you tonight for these mighty machines that you brought before us.
Baptist pastor Joe Nelms was in Nashville giving the pre-race invocation. Some are calling it the first sponsored prayer, brought to you by...
Thank you for the Dodges and the Toyotas. Thank you for the Fords. Thank you for Sunoco Racing Fuel and Goodyear Tires.
As one critic posted on YouTube, I am certainly not a religious man, but I'm pretty sure product placement in a prayer equals a straight ticket to hell. But Pastor Nelms isn't bothered.
I can assure you there were
no endorsement deals, but I am not against them. Any of them that want to send some money to our church, we'll be happy to use it.
And wait till you hear how he ended the prayer.
In Jesus' name, boogity, 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 amen.
But what does boogity mean?
It means go get after it, boys. It's Southern for get to it.
It's the catchphrase used by a well-known NASCAR announcer to start a race, but the prayer started critics' engines. It's making a mockery of prayer. He's just being a clown. He is being sacrilegious. Pastor Nelms says he just wanted to get folks who don't go to church thinking.
Hey, maybe not all Christians are sick in the mud.
Admirers called it the best prayer ever. This is awesome, putting the fun back in fundamentalism.
Lord, I want to thank you for my smoking hot wife tonight, Lisa.
That smoking hot wife part sure rings a bell. Will Ferrell playing race car driver Ricky Bobby,
Dear Lord, baby Jesus.
thanking the Lord in Talladega Nights.
And of course, my red-hot smoking wife, Carly, who's a stone-cold fox.
Pastor Nelms confesses he recently saw Talladega Nights on TV and got the idea to use it. As for his wife, she said this to someone who called to complain about the prayer.
I'm the smoking hot wife, and I don't care how many times he says it to a big crowd or a small crowd, I'm enjoying it.
This pastor has no issues with the separation between church and track. Jeannie Moe, CNN.
In Jesus' name, boogity, 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 amen.
New York.
CNN's Jeannie Moe's reporting there. And okay, you know, if you watch the show with any regularity, you know I'm from the South. Maybe it's because I'm not a huge NASCAR fan, though. I had never heard boogity, boogity, boogity before. I don't know if maybe I'm just out of the loop on that one. Maybe it's just because I'm not a NASCAR fan, like I said. There was a song, though, that had boogity, boogity in it, or was it oogity, boogity? It was something kind of similar, but it wasn't anything to do with NASCAR. So I was like, what in the world is he talking about? But, leave it to Jeannie Moe and she'll explain it all. Oh, my goodness. Well, that is it for this edition of Currents. But that's not it for the great programming you come to expect here on NET. Now, you know, it might not be too hot to light the oven and cook you a little meal here, but trust me, it is never too hot to watch a show about cooking. Keep your finger off that remote right now, or that dial, because if it is Tuesday night, it is another edition of NET's foodie favorite, Breaking Bread. It's a brand new episode of the show, and it's coming up at 8 right after our show. Well, until next time, be sure to visit us online over at currentsny.net. You can go there to watch selected reports from the show and full broadcasts. You can also friend us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter. There we are at CurrentsNY. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great night.